Once upon a time, Zeus found himself in a rather frisky mood and turned his attention to Leto, the daughter of Titans Coeus and Phoebe. Their affair was as passionate as it was fleeting, and by the time Leto found herself expecting, Zeus had already vanished into thin air, terrified of his wife Hera's wrath. Now, Hera wasn't just any goddess. Naturally, she forbade anyone from offering Leto refuge. Pregnant and pursued, Leto wandered far and wide, desperately seeking a safe place to give birth. At last, she found Ortygia, a tiny drifting island with no fixed home, much like herself. Sympathetic to Leto's plight, Ortygia offered her sanctuary, boldly defying Hera's decree. What followed was a grueling labor, 9 days and nights of pain, with Hera and Ortygia, the goddess of childbirth, nowhere to be found. On the 10th day, Ortygia finally took pity and flew down to assist, helping Leto deliver Artemis. With newborn Artemis in tow, Leto braved the sea again, this time reaching the island of Delos, south of Greece, where she finally gave birth to Apollo, future patron of the arts, music, and, yes, a generous backer of countless Olympiad-level English programs. As for Ortygia, Zeus later fixed it in place near Sicily, down in southern Italy. Some versions of the tale claim that Artemis and Apollo were born in the same location. But either way, Zeus made sure his son entered the world in style, gifting him a golden cap, a lyre, and a swan-drawn chariot. Just days later, Apollo transformed into a robust young god, joining his twin sister Artemis as one of the 12 illustrious members of the Olympian Council. Apollo, the god of light and truth, whose life is essentially one long highlight reel of impressive feats. Let's start with the time he took down Python, a monstrous half-snake, half-dragon creature, just to settle the score for his mom. See, when Hera caught wind of Zeus and Leto's affair, she went full-on petty mode. First, she forbade any land to offer refuge to Leto. Then, just for kicks, she asked Mother Earth, Gaia, to spawn a giant beast to terrorize her. Enter Python, a nasty, slithering behemoth who became Leto's personal nightmare. Python stalked her relentlessly, keeping Leto in a state of perpetual fear. With a little help from Poseidon, Leto finally found shelter on the island of Ortygia, but not before enduring Python's constant lurking. Python eventually settled in a cave at the foot of Mount Parnassus. Some say he was stationed there to guard a temple of Gaia, where the Earth goddess would issue cryptic prophecies to those mortals brave or foolish enough to seek them. But Python wasn't exactly a stellar neighbor. He trashed crops, hunted livestock, and made life a living nightmare for the locals. When Python slithered out of his cave, the ground would shake, rocks would tumble, and a dust cloud would rise as trees snapped, houses buckled, and flat land morphed into craters. Every living creature, birds, beasts, even the forest nymphs, daughters of Zeus, would flee in terror. Well, everyone except Apollo. Being a bit of an archery prodigy, he had no problem keeping his distance and picking off the close combat serpent with deadly precision. After slaying Python, Apollo buried the creature and built a shrine over its remains, naming it Delphi. At Delphi, the most beautiful young maidens were chosen as priestesses, known as the Pythia, to serve as Apollo's mouthpiece, conveying divine oracles to mortals. Another glorious feat in Apollo's highlight reel involves dealing with the colossal duo Ephialtes and Otis, better known as the Aloati, sons of Aloeus and annoyances to all of Olympus. From a young age, these brothers were freakishly strong, and as they grew, so did their audacity. Their grand plan? Scale Olympus, kidnap Artemis and Hera, and make them their wives. A bit ambitious, to say the least. These two geniuses decided to stack mountains on top of each other as a DIY ladder to the gods' realm. When they finally breached Olympus, the god of war, Ares, rushed in to stop them. Unfortunately, the two oversized brutes promptly tossed him into a cage, leaving Hermes to swoop in with some crafty tricks to free him. Olympus was in serious trouble. If these two kept at it, things could go from bad to worse in record time. So, naturally, Apollo stepped up, bow in hand, and shot down the two oversized goons before they could cause any more chaos. Though, there's another version of the story that credits Artemis with their demise. In this version, Artemis transforms into a doe and prances between the brothers, luring them into a fatal trap. Unable to resist, they both hurl their spears, missing her and hitting each other instead. Apollo also happens to be the god of the arts and music, because why not add a little flair to his divine resume? Straight out of the cradle, Zeus gifted his son a lyre, presumably to entertain the gods at Olympus when things got a bit dull. Apollo quickly became the most talented among Zeus's offspring, at least the ones lucky enough to live on Olympus. He'd often perform with his half-sisters, the Muses, the 9 goddesses of inspiration tasked by Zeus himself to partner with Apollo in enriching the spiritual lives of all beings. Under Apollo's expert guidance, the muses would sing, dance, and bring a bit of culture to Olympus, serenading the gods at their lavish feasts and making sure the celestial party never lacked for entertainment. However, it was Apollo's musical prowess that revealed his darker side. Enter Marsyas, a Silenus, half-goat, half-man, with a hefty dose of hubris. As one of Dionysus's merry satyr entourage, Marsyas had quite the backstory with a certain cursed flute. This flute, as it happens, was originally crafted by Athena. After playing a few notes, she tossed it aside, declaring it cursed, and warning that whoever picked it up would suffer a brutal fate. The reason? Athena discovered that puffing her cheeks to play the flute wasn't exactly the most flattering look. Image-conscious as always, she couldn't have her reputation ruined by a mere musical instrument. Marsyas, oblivious to the curse, stumbled upon the flute and, without much thought to aesthetics, practiced relentlessly. Eventually, he mastered every conceivable technique, gaining enough confidence to believe he was the best musician around. Naturally, with a bit too much swagger, he challenged Apollo himself to a musical duel. Apollo, never one to back down from a challenge, accepted. The stakes? The loser would become the victor's property, to do with as they pleased. The Muses and King Midas of Phrygia were summoned as judges. Apollo dazzled with his divine charm and flawless technique, scoring an easy 10 on style alone. Poor Marsyas, however, lacked Apollo's celestial finesse, and despite his skill, he came off as rough, untamed, a bit too woodsy for the panel. With only Midas siding with Marsyas, the Muses handed victory to Apollo. But Apollo's win didn't come with mercy. Instead, he was incensed that a mere satyr had dared challenge an Olympian god. As punishment, Marsyas was strung up on a tree and flayed alive, a cruel end to his ambition. There's a story that Apollo later regretted this brutality, transforming Marsyas into a river and gifting his flute to Dionysus. Despite being Zeus's golden boy, handsome, musically gifted, and all-around charming, Apollo's love life was a string of disasters. His first heartbreak? The nymph Daphne. It all started after Apollo took down the giant python and made the mistake of mocking Eros's archery skills. In the world of gods, insulting the wrong person never ends well. So, on a fine morning in the forests of Thessaly, under the watchful eye of the river god Peneus, Apollo spotted Daphne picking flowers. Eros seized the moment, launching 2 invisible arrows, one to spark Apollo's passion and another to extinguish any love in Daphne's heart. When Apollo made his move, Daphne bolted. The harder he chased, the faster she fled, but Apollo, with his divine stamina, closed in. Just as he was about to catch her, Daphne called on her father, Peneus, who promptly transformed her into a lush laurel tree. Heartbroken, Apollo fashioned a wreath from her leaves, vowing to keep it as a memento of his unfulfilled love. From that day on, the laurel became sacred to Apollo, eventually symbolizing victory and triumph, a small consolation prize for a god who couldn't win at love. Another one of Apollo's tragic love affairs was with Princess Coronis, daughter of King Phlegyas of Boeotia. Their romance was something of a covert operation, with some saying Phlegyas was blissfully ignorant, and others claiming he disapproved entirely. But either way, they were together, that is, until things went sideways. Coronis, it turned out, was not as pure-hearted as her beauty suggested. While Apollo was away, she entertained a mortal named Ischys, assuming Apollo would never find out. Big mistake. This is the god of light and truth, lady. Secrets aren't exactly safe around him. Discovering her infidelity, Apollo, seething with betrayal, shot her down. Of course, the moment she lay dead, he felt a pang of regret. So, as a parting gesture, he performed her cremation. But just as the flames rose, Apollo had a last-minute epiphany and decided to save the unborn child she carried. With his divine powers, Apollo retrieved the baby from Coronis' lifeless body. He named the boy Asclepius and entrusted him to the wise centaur Chiron. Renowned as a healer and mentor, Chiron had trained many Greek heroes: Achilles, Odysseus, Diomedes. Under Chiron's guidance, Asclepius mastered the art of healing and even developed a little something extra: the ability to bring the dead back to life. Asclepius' fame spread across Greece, and people flocked to him for cures. For humans, it was a miracle. For Hades, however, it was bad business. With fewer souls crossing the Styx, Charon had his oar stuck in the mud, and Cerberus was left yawning in boredom. Furious, Hades complained to Zeus, who, after pondering the cosmic implications, decided that Asclepius' resurrection skills were disrupting the natural order. So, Zeus struck him down with a lightning bolt. Apollo, enraged at losing his son, knew better than to take on Zeus directly. Instead, he took out his anger on the Cyclopes, the giants who forged Zeus's thunderbolts. Zeus didn't take kindly to Apollo's outburst and sentenced him to serve as a shepherd for King Admetus of Thessaly. How long he was banished is up for debate. Some say a year, others say 9. But even gods apparently need a timeout now and then. Apollo was one of the most widely revered gods in ancient Greece and Rome. Under Emperor Augustus, his status was elevated to unprecedented heights, practically making him the empire's celestial mascot. Even after Rome converted to Christianity, Apollo remained one of the few old gods who continued to receive reverence for a long time. And that, friends, is Apollo. In our next video, we'll dive into the story of his twin sister, Artemis. Stay tuned.